Greetings sailors and welcome back to a World of Warships replay that I've actually taken from the WoW's replay site. So this isn't one that was submitted to me, this is just one that I have picked out that looked interesting, and one of the big reasons why I picked it out is because it's the Schlieffen, the upcoming tier 10 German battle cruiser. Now you were able to get this early via auction mechanic that Wargaming decided to put in, or well, it's not the first time they've done it, but it's the first time they've done it to get early access to a tier 10 ship, and while frankly I think it was kind of grubby way to do it, shall we say, the whole auction process that they did, some people clearly decided that they were happy enough putting in their was it credits to balloons? I can't even honestly remember, but yeah, you know, the monetization of tech tree lines, new tech tree lines, continues apace, and it almost seems like that's what's driving the release of new tech trees now, is Wargaming wanting to monetize them in the pre-release stage, on top of, you know, selling premium camos and other special premium camos down the line. So yeah, but that's a whole other topic. We're going to talk more about the ship itself. So it's got, in theory, the same armament in terms of its guns as the GK, except it doesn't really. They're not the same 420mm guns. I think they are a shorter barrel length and possibly less penetration. No idea about the accuracy of these as compared to the GK. I mean, the GK has always made up for not having great accuracy, although it's better than it was when it first came out, but it's always made up for it by having a 12 barrel count with the either the 406s or the 420mm, and you had the choice of either taking the quicker loading 406s or the punchier 420s. With this, I think you just get the 420mm guns, and I think it is actually just the 420s. I don't think there's any choice on this ship. And in addition to that, you also have the Elbings torpedoes with 13.5 kilometer range, 50 knot speed. So you can sail around pretending to be a destroyer potentially, although you're not going to be doing so in a very sneaky fashion. The other pertinent things about this are it's got a limited number of damage control parties, and Kyrios, or possibly Kyrios, I really don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to stick with Kyrios, I guess, has chosen not to go with Superintendent here, which I think on a ship of this nature is not something I would do, especially as it's costing you a heal, and therefore it's only got 3 heals to work with. And when you have a fairly chunky amount of superstructure, that is kind of a big deal. The Soviet battleships have a much more sparse superstructure in general than the German battle cruisers do, and you're going to be far more subject to HE spam and getting set on fire rather from that central span, depending on well, it could be 1 fire, it could be 2 fires, depending on your captain's skills. So overall, I'm not sure I agree with that captain skill choice that they've made, but they have built this in, I mean, there's a couple of skills we can pinpoint. They have built this in a sort of more of a close quarters combat role. They've got the enhanced, I can't even remember what it's called now, but the one that gives you faster reload when you are within standard detectability of, I think, is it more enemies than allies, or is it just standard detectability if there's an enemy ship that's within that spotted? And they've also got the secondary one that I've also forgotten the name of. The one that gives you extra secondary accuracy. That Yoshino dropping torpedoes from behind allies or very close to allies, that's going to be a common theme in this particular round, by the way. It's a good thing they don't do team damage anymore, because those Yoshino torps hurt. That was probably one of the better recent changes Wargaming has made, just because, yeah, sometimes your teammates are really not careful, and with long-range torps and hard-hitting torps like on the Yoshino, that can be particularly nasty. So far this game is not looking that good, just in terms of map control. Yep. Hello Yoshino, yep, we know you're there, well done. The allies over near the sea cap have managed to at least prevent capping so far, and the team over on this side, I mean, they're trying to disrupt this Shima from capping, and hopefully they can take out the Shima. I mean, Kyrios is being quite cautious here just because of the threat of that Shimakaze, and they've actually popped one of their limited number of hydros to maybe give themselves some early warning there, and you can see their secondaries actually starting to work over this Shima as well. They don't have a full secondary spec here. I don't think the range of these is quite the maximum. It's something like 10.3, 10.5. And I'm pretty sure you'd be able to get it up to over 11, if not nearly 12, as you can with the GK. So they've sacrificed something somewhere in terms of getting that extra bit of range, but I don't know if it's going to be a captain skill or if it's going to be an equipment module. Anyway, so what was I saying? Yeah, they've actually managed to dispose of the Shima, although that Thunderer has taken a heavy toll in doing so, and Kyrios himself is now pushing into the cap, hoping maybe to help this capping process, because yeah, the Thunderer is making a vain attempt to get away, and none of the cruisers are quite close enough to get in the cap, though at least one of them is heading this way. I think maybe both of them are. But this GK has chosen now to start pushing in for some reason, and it's not really a good decision on their part. I mean, we're now getting full-on secondary walls between these two ships, and interestingly, this actually has more secondary guns than the GK, but the smaller caliber ones are 105 mils rather than the 128 mils on the GK. So smaller fire chance and obviously less damage, but because they're German secondaries, the HE still has enough penetration to get those squashier areas of deck. I think it's 26 mil of pen with those 105s. So you don't need to take IFHE for those 105s to actually do something. And of course you can even enhance their fire setting ability with the correct application of flags and captain skills. It looks like they've fairly well taken control of this side though. I mean, Kyrios himself netted his first kill with that Hindi. He might be able to get the GK, who has unfortunately taken out a Petro. I don't know if the Petro had just angled badly, or I don't know, maybe they took a big hit when they were coming round into the cap and made an awkward turn, because the Petro is quite well known for having very strong armour, but yeah, and they looked awfully close to losing that Napoli there as well, but they kind of just went past each other rather than actually hitting each other, so yeah, fortunately that did not occur. The Yoshino continuing to be very shy and continuing to be the sort of player that drops torpedoes from behind allies. That Napoli, I think they've committed at this point. I mean, they went in fairly strong against the GK, maybe could have played a bit more cautiously themselves, but yeah, they've made themselves now the primary target of that Cristoforo Colombo, who is themselves trying to get away. They've actually popped a smoke, but they've still been firing, so it's only just now that they've disengaged enough to get unspotted. So it looks like Kyrios might actually get this cap solo. We still have quite a lot of work left to do if we're going to get this game, though. The enemy team are ahead on points. They've managed to get the B and the C cap. The enemy team have largely overcome their team at the C cap, although it's been with some substantial losses, and although they are ahead on points by a pretty reasonable margin, they're not that close to winning this. It's not like they're sitting at 800 or 900 points right now. They have really heavily traded in this game, and we're over the halfway mark, but there's only now 4 ships left on each team, and so there is still a comfortable amount of time with which to turn this around. Even though the enemy team has over half the points that they do. And yes, hello Yoshino, I don't know what you were hoping to achieve with that drop there, but okay, at least you're consistent. 2 of the surviving enemy team, by the way, are submarines, and this is going to make things a little bit interesting because, well, they don't have any destroyers left with which they might counter these subs, because both teams, what did they have, 2 destroyers apiece? Both teams lost their destroyers fairly early on. I mean, we saw the Harugamo just rushing into the enemy on this flank right at the start for some reason, and predictably dying in the process. So yeah, I've got no idea what happened with their other destroyer or their submarines, but the other team's subs have clearly been playing a little more cautiously, although they don't have any kills yet. That 2501, however, is about to get their first kill. There's no way the GK is going to come out of that alive. Even if they don't actually get the kill, I can't remember. Having said they're going to get the kill, no, it's the Cristoforo Colombo that gets the kill. They were actually lighting up the GK for the enemy team, so I was wrong, it wasn't them, but I'm sure one of them ends up getting a kill at some point. Now he's got absolutely no backup from that Yoshino. That Yoshino is still being incredibly cautious. They're actually heading back into the A cap, and there's a 400 point difference right now, so that's not, I mean, I think they're just not that good of a player, but at least they're not that good of a player that's not rushing in to die, if I can put it that way. The fact that they are staying alive and keeping their points in play, as it were, rather than just handing them to the enemy team, is it's preferable to the alternative. So yeah, that Yoshino could be playing worse right now, but they're certainly not playing great. And Kyrios clearly has decided he has to take this risk of getting into the cap, even though there's 2 submarines to the north, and he's got this Cristoforo Colombo bearing down on him from one side and the Puerto Rico bearing down on him from the other. He doesn't have a heal left. He's only got his damage control parties, so yeah, he's got to try and finish off this Cristoforo Colombo before the Puerto Rico comes around the corner, and he's actually placed himself really awkwardly here. I'm not sure why he's nosed into the rocks like this, because he has to know how potent that PR's AP could be if they get a broadside shot, and he's trying to now move around to get forward. I think he just wanted to avoid any possibility of ramming from the Colombo, but he's then put himself in a lot of peril from the Puerto Rico. He does have torpedoes, which are almost reloaded, but I think really what saves him here truly is the fact that the Puerto Rico was firing at, I think, maybe the Salem. They fired off a salvo at the Salem, so they didn't come round the corner with their guns available, and they might have had a chance to do some more nasty damage, but instead they were firing into the angled belt armor, which is pretty decent, and it did nothing at all, and the torpedoes were able to finish them off. So he still lost some health, but that could have been far worse. That was definitely a misplay by the Puerto Rico. They could have taken advantage of the situation a lot more there than they did. So now it's just 1 submarine left. The other 251 actually got taken out by, I think, the Yoshino. I mean, the Yoshino's managed some kills, and they've still got a lot of health, and this is the point where you would want them to be more active, because those hit points are important. But it's the caps that are going to hopefully make this a win for them, because having capped Kyrios has, at least with these extra trades that have been going on, I mean, he's also managed some kills, so he's done some pretty heavy lifting in this one, but they are now more or less equal on points. However, the Salem, who's trying to cap C, is getting hosed down by torps from the U-2501 and actually goes down, so that's given them a little bit of a bump, but it's probably not going to be enough unless Kyrios also goes down. The enemy 2501 probably can't win this for their team. He's still got one Hydro left, but yeah, he's absolutely relying on this to go in and take any hits, because they're so high health that the enemy sub isn't going to kill them unless they get spectacularly lucky with a detonation. So some random torps out across the cap. He knows he was pinged from that direction, and this I don't think they're running Hydro. They must be running with defensive, because I don't think we've seen them use a Hydro during any of the game. But as it turns out, the 25001 is over there. They've run out of dive capacity, and the secondaries are actually going to finish the job and give him a close quarters and a Kraken to finish out this very, very good match, in which Kyrios had to do a heck of a lot in order to make it a win. There was still a lot going on otherwise with his team. I mean, if there'd been a couple more enemy ships left, if it had been more one-sided over on the sea cap, this could have been a very different story. But as it was, because of all that heavy lifting, I mean 2700 base XP, and there was actually somebody else on his team with just over 2000 base XP. It ended up being a win, and quite a close one as well, just in terms of the numbers of ships. And if that 2501 had maybe had the extra bit of time to get in a position, and Kyrios hadn't been... he was playing it smart. He was going around the island to give himself cover. I don't really know what that 2501 could have done to save it at that point. There was a lot of pressure on them, and towards the end of the match you're not going to have the dive capacity left. So I think at that point it was probably not a winnable position for the enemy team. But overall that was still a really good match, and a very entertaining one to watch, I thought. And maybe shows some of what the Schlieffen is about. It's definitely not going to be as overall survivable as the GK, just because of the limited damage control party, and it doesn't have turtleback armor either. But it's not like it's got a particularly high sitting citadel, so that probably will help a fair bit. And the belt armor is, as we saw there, pretty decent. So overall, I'm kind of looking forward to this coming in as a tech tree ship and trying it out for myself. I only got as far as like level 6, what, tier 6 with the preview event. So I'll have to do a bit of grinding once the line goes live in the next patch. But I'm always up for some more fun tanky brawly battleships, and it does look like the line is going to be largely that, even if they generally have fewer guns and are maybe a little squashier overall, just in terms of their general survivability, than their battleship counterparts. Anyway, if you enjoyed this replay, you can do all the usual things down underneath the video, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.